Why would the world's #2 golfer risk angering the PGA Tour and a sponsor like FedEx, which commits $100 million a year to the FedEx Cup series, by skipping a playoff event? This is far more than just a week off. Rory McIlroy's controversial choice to miss the FedEx St. Jude Championship has triggered urgent discussions among tour leaders, with player director Peter Malnati openly admitting he is very concerned about the precedent this sets. This single decision has exposed a critical weakness in the tour's design, forcing officials to consider drastic rule changes. But what really motivated McIlroy, and what does this mean for the future of the playoffs? Looking at McIlroy's move, it's clear this wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision. His schedule for the rest of the year is intense. He's not just focused on the PGA Tour, but also juggling the Irish Open, the BMW PGA Championship, the Ryder Cup, DP World Tour events, and the Australian Open. Add in the new TGL season, and he's staring down almost 25 weeks of high-level golf. For any player, that's a brutal stretch. For McIlroy, managing his time and energy across continents is a necessity, not a luxury. His history at TPC Southwind played a role too. After finishing near the bottom at the FedEx St. Jude Championship in 2024, and previously mentioning his lack of success at that course, McIlroy's choice to skip Memphis looks less like an act of defiance and more like a calculated business decision. He's not just chasing trophies, he's protecting his body and focusing on events that mean the most to him and his brand. The timing is no accident. The FedEx Cup playoffs are structured so that playoff events award 4 times the points of regular season tournaments, with 3,444 points and a firm grip on the #2 spot in the standings. McIlroy was already locked into the BMW Championship and the Tour Championship, regardless of what happened in Memphis. Skipping the St. Jude didn't put his season at risk. It simply bought him rest at a critical moment. Financially, the decision is just as solid. McIlroy has already banked $10 million in FedEx Cup bonus money this year. For a player fighting for their card or looking to climb the rankings, every playoff event is crucial. But for someone in McIlroy's position, the stakes are different. The playoff points system, combined with his strong season, gave him the freedom to prioritize other commitments without worrying about missing out on the biggest paydays or jeopardizing his place in the final events. Other players have taken notice, but most aren't worried this will spark a trend. Jordan Spieth pointed out that only a handful of players in the world would even consider skipping a playoff event, those with McIlroy's global stature and schedule. For the vast majority, the risk is simply too high. Still, McIlroy's move is a clear signal that for the top tier, the system can be navigated strategically. If you've played well enough all season, you can afford to sit out the first playoff stop and still control your destiny. The choice to skip Memphis wasn't about fatigue alone. It was a calculated risk made possible by a unique convergence of factors: a packed international schedule, a secure spot in the standings, and massive earnings already in the bank. For McIlroy, it made perfect sense. But when a player at his level decides a playoff event is expendable, it raises bigger questions for the PGA Tour. The implications go beyond one player's schedule and start to reveal deeper issues in the structure of the playoffs themselves. The foundation of the FedEx Cup playoffs is built on the expectation that the biggest names will show up when it matters most. But the reality of the point system tells a different story. Each playoff event awards 4 times the points of a regular season tournament, 2,000 points for a win, giving top-ranked players like Rory McIlroy and Scottie Scheffler such a huge cushion that missing the opening leg barely dents their standing. When a player can skip the first playoff event and still remain safely inside the cut line for the BMW Championship, it exposes a vulnerability in the system that wasn't meant to be exploited. Peter Malnati, a PGA Tour Policy Board player director, didn't hide his reaction. He described himself as very concerned about the message McIlroy's decision sends. Malnati's worry isn't just about this one instance. It's about the precedent it could set. If the playoffs are supposed to be the season's defining showdown, what does it say when one of the biggest stars can opt out without consequence? For Malnati, the integrity of the playoffs is on the line, and the potential impact on sponsors like FedEx, who invest $100 million annually, can't be ignored. But not everyone on the policy board agrees. Webb Simpson, another player director, offered a different perspective. He defended McIlroy's right to manage his own schedule, pointing out that golf isn't like other sports where participation is mandatory. Simpson even referenced his own experience. He withdrew from a playoff event in 2020 to rest, reinforcing his belief that players should have autonomy over when and where they compete. For Simpson, the tour's strength comes from allowing individuality, not enforcing uniformity. This split among player directors highlights a deeper philosophical divide. Is the tour a collective enterprise that demands commitment to its biggest events, or is it a platform for independent contractors to choose their own path? The cracks in the system become even more obvious when you look at golf's own history. In 2007, Tiger Woods skipped the inaugural playoff event, the Barclays, and still went on to win the FedEx Cup. The format structure allowed him, and now McIlroy, to miss a major event and remain in control. This isn't a fluke. It's a feature of the point system that rewards regular season dominance with a safety net so wide that even a playoff absence is survivable. The PGA Tour recognizes the risk. Malnati has already hinted that stuff is in the works, suggesting that officials are considering new rules or even penalties for players who skip playoff events they've qualified for. The goal is to protect the credibility of the playoffs and ensure that sponsors and fans get what they're promised, the best players competing at the biggest moments. If more stars follow McIlroy's example, the playoffs could quickly lose their status as a must-watch finale and become just another set of tournaments on the calendar. For now, the tour faces a problem that can't be ignored. The structure that was designed to reward excellence has made it possible for the very best to opt out without real consequences. And with so much riding on the presence of top players, the stakes have never been higher. That brings us to the heart of the matter, the $100 million question. FedEx's annual $100 million investment makes it the PGA Tour's single most important sponsor. And that commitment is built on a straightforward promise. When the playoffs arrive, the world's best golfers will compete, and fans will get a true championship showcase. FedEx doesn't just put its name on the trophy, it underwrites the entire postseason, expecting a return in the form of drama, ratings, and star power. Rory McIlroy's decision to sit out the FedEx St. Jude Championship lands right in the middle of this value equation. When the tour's most visible and marketable star skips a playoff event, it sends a signal to FedEx that the guarantee they've banked on isn't ironclad. Suddenly, the business case for their 9-figure sponsorship is on shaky ground. This isn't just a one-off scheduling quirk, it's a direct challenge to the credibility of the playoffs and the tour's ability to deliver on its most important promise. The pressure now falls squarely on Brian Rolapp, the PGA Tour's new CEO. Rolapp brings experience from the NFL, where he helped shape some of the most successful playoff systems in sports. But golf is a different animal. Here, he's caught between two powerful forces: the demands of his most valuable sponsor and the independence of his top players. The policy board, including player directors, is already debating whether to strengthen attendance rules or preserve the tour's tradition of player autonomy. On one side, there's talk of stricter penalties or new requirements to ensure that qualified stars show up for every playoff event. On the other, there's a strong argument for respecting the unique nature of golf, where players are independent contractors and forced participation could backfire. FedEx's investment isn't just about signage and television spots, it's about creating a product that stands above the rest of the sports calendar. McIlroy's absence forces executives to reconsider whether the tour can reliably provide that product. If the playoffs can't guarantee the presence of every top player, the entire postseason model is at risk. This will shape contract negotiations and could influence whether FedEx or any future sponsor is willing to keep investing at this level. The stakes are even higher as the tour moves toward its 2025 strategy. The introduction of 8 signature events, each offering 700 points to the winner, and held at storied venues like the Century and the Memorial Tournament, is supposed to lock in star participation and deliver must-watch moments. These events are designed to prevent exactly what happened in Memphis, but McIlroy's calculated absence shows that even the best-laid plans can be vulnerable. If a top player can find a strategic reason to skip a playoff event, what's to stop them from doing the same with a signature event, if the math works in their favor? Rolap's response will be a defining moment for the PGA Tour. He must find a way to reassure sponsors that their investment is secure while also navigating a locker room full of empowered, globally minded players. The debate over rule changes versus player freedom will shape not just the next contract, but the entire future of professional golf's business model. McIlroy's move has forced the tour to confront a conflict that's been building for years, one that can't be ignored any longer. Rory McIlroy's choice wasn't just about rest. It highlighted the tension between the PGA Tour's sponsor commitments and the independence top players expect. The fallout has made it clear. Sponsor value is at risk when stars can skip marquee events, and player autonomy is now directly challenging the tour's business model. Tour officials are already discussing possible rule changes. Board members have said stuff is in the works, with talk of a McIlroy Rule to require playoff participation from qualified players. Now the tour must decide how firmly it will enforce participation. What do you think? Should the PGA Tour penalize players for skipping playoff events? Let us know in the comments.